Hello, my name is Parker Fry, and in this presentation we'll be looking at the life and photographs of famous photographer Ansel Adams. This quote by Ansel Adams shows his drive for photography, to preserve nature and to show it to all people. In 1927, Adams produced his first portfolio in his style Parmelian prints of the High Sierras, which includes the famous image Monolith, the Face of Half Dome, which we will be looking at later in this presentation. The reason he chose to publish his portfolio is that he wrote, "My photographs have now reached a stage where they are worthy of the world's critical examination. I have suddenly come upon a new style which I believe I will place in my work equal to any of its kind." In 1930 he published his first photo book, Taos Pueblo, with the help of writer Mark Hunter Austin. In 1931, Adams was able to put together his first solo museum exhibition at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. The exhibition featured 60 prints taken in the High Sierra. Ansel Adams was born February 20th, 1902 in San Francisco, California. By the age of 10 he had taught himself how to play and read music, and by 1920 piano was his primary occupation and his intended profession. Back in 1916, however, with his family, he went to Yosemite for the first time and spoke of its splendor and glory. This is also where he was given his first camera by his father, a Kodak Brownie camera. In the following year, he returned with a better camera and a tripod. This is also when he began working as a part-time photographer in a San Francisco studio. At age 17, Adams joined the Sierra Club, a group dedicated to protecting the wild places of the earth. He was hired on to be the summer overseer of the Sierra Club Visitor Facility in Yosemite Valley, California. Adams traveled throughout the United States during his photographic career, shooting all sorts of national parks, and as part of the Guggenheim Fellowship was set to go to all 28 national parks at the time, although he only made it to 27, missing out on the Florida Everglades National Park. One of Adams's most famous photographs, Moonrise, over Hernandez, New Mexico, was taken while he was working for the United States government. It was found out later that by calculating the position of the moon, they were able to find out that the moonrise was taken on November 1st, 1941, a day which he had not been working for the department, so the image belonged to Adams. This had to be done because he was less disciplined about recording the dates of images and neglected to note the date that moonrise was taken. Other photos, including the Tetons and the Snake River, which have been made for the mural project, became property of the United States government. Adams frequently visited national parks to take photos of them in awe of their natural splendor. One of the styles that he ended up going with a lot was sublime, and the theory that everything is so small and we are nothing compared to the grandeur of the universe. During his time in New Mexico, he took the photo called Aspens. Aspens are a tree found in northern New Mexico in the more mountainous regions, and you can tell it's an aspen by the way it is, and also by the white bark and oval-shaped deep green leaves that are each about the size of a dollar coin. In his photo Monolith, Adams used a red filter over his camera so the sky would appear almost black, so that the snow would be highlighted all across the face of Half Dome. He considered Monolith, the face of Half Dome, Yosemite National Park, California, his first really fine photograph, and it was a career-changing image that marked his first successful visualization. Adams' term for carefully determining all of the elements of a photograph before even releasing the shutter. It is said that he knew every vantage point of Yosemite intimately, and knew how to wait with the great patience and deliberation until the light brought out the utmost grandeur and majesty of the mountain ranges, rushing waterfalls, and clouds clearing over the valley. Adams is widely recognized as America's most eloquent photographer-poet of the western wilderness landscape. His passionate feeling for the land as a mountaineer, photographer, and preservationist, and his consummate craftsmanship with the camera and light were celebrated. In 1961, Ansel Adams visited Philmont Scout Ranch in Cimarron, New Mexico and the surrounding environments. This trip resulted in one of his most dramatic but rarely seen photographs, Thunderstorm over the Great Plains, which was shot at Philmont and features a billowing thunderhead over the Philmont Plains. In 1974, Adams had a major retrospective exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Much of this time here in the 1970s was spent curating and reprinting negatives from his vault, in part to satisfy the great demand of art museums which had finally created departments of photography and desired his works, and he also devoted his considerable writing skills and prestige to the cause of environmentalism, emphasizing particularly the Big Sur coastline of California and the protection from Yosemite from overuse. President Jimmy Carter commissioned him to take the first official portrait of a president made by photograph. According to the Met Museum, Adams was one of America's well-known photographers by the mid-1930s. Just a few years after his decision to pursue photography as a career, he came to the medium for a background in music and a profound love of Western landscape, particularly that of the High Sierra and Yosemite Valley, where he made a vast majority of his negatives, as well as this photograph, Trees and Snow. Both influences are clearly evident in his work, and the strong vertical black lines of the tree trunks create a baseline grid of delicate melody of the slow, horizontal, snow-tipped branches, while the clean precision of the print mimics crisp mountain air. As a result, like most of Adams' photograph, functions as the graphic equivalent of nature experience. Adams' use of black and white film, even after the invention of colored photography, was meant to keep a record of what the national parks were to look like before tourism, and the effect that humans would later have on them. He did this to keep the natural and serene beauty that nature holds, and it was used in the works to promote many of the goals of the Sierra Club and the environmental movement, but always insisted that for his photographs, beauty comes first. Ansel Adams was also a founding member of the group F-64. As Edward Weston phrased it, the camera should be used for recording life, for rendering the very substance and quintessence of everything itself, whether it be polished steel or palpitating flesh. A corollary of this idea was that the camera was able to see the world more clearly than the human eye, because it didn't project personal prejudice onto the subject. The group's effort to present the camera's vision as clearly as possible included advocating the use of the aperture f/64 in order to provide the greatest depth of field, thus allowing for the largest percentage of the picture to be made in sharp focus. Contact printing, a method of making prints by placing photographic paper directly in contact with a negative, instead of using an enlarger to project the negative onto paper, and glossy papers instead of matte or artist papers, the surfaces which used to tend to dispense the contours of objects. Adams' contribution to the world of photography and the art world in and of itself was that he created the Illustrated Guide to Yosemite, and in 2007 he was inducted into the California Hall of Fame by California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was also an accomplished pianist and had spent a winter in San Francisco teaching music lessons and performing as part of the Milanovi Trio.